Hello and welcome to the Sewing Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to make a quilt using a jelly roll and a creative grids ruler which has, I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, but here goes, a trapezoid shape. Some people call it trapezoid. But anyway, I'm going to show you how you cut these shapes which form the braids in the quilt behind me. So the first thing you're going to need is your jelly roll. The thing with this quilt is it's made up with lights and darks. So the important thing is that you separate your lights and darks before you start your cutting. So I've got two strips here and I've already put them right sides together. So I have my light and my dark. I'm just going to press those together. I don't usually press pre-cuts, but I'm just going to press those together because it's going to make life easier for me when we get to the cutting stage using the creative grid. Now the important thing is when you cut these two strips together, you always have them in the same order. What do I mean by that? So let me just show you. For example, the way I remember it is I have my light fabric facing up. So I think light up, and I put my dark fabric face down onto the light. So if you remember it that way round, because there's nothing worse than finding you've cut some of your strips and you've got the shapes wrong, because as you can see here, your lights and your darks, if you look at the top camera, you can see the shape goes opposite, and that's really important. Otherwise, it isn't going to work. So I'm going to show you how this works. The other thing I would say is because you're cutting through two layers, I would have a new blade in your rotary cutter. So I'm going to line this up. Just going to take off the raggy end first of all, get rid of that bit. So you can see that I've got this lined up here. Now I'm left-handed, so it's going to look a bit strange. Those of you that are right-handed are going to cut up, down and up, but I'm going to go the opposite way. So I've got it lined up here and I'm going to, keeping the pressure on the ruler, come down into the gap. Then I'm going to go along to here, put my cutter in and go up there. And then I'm going to come down to there. And I would do that all the way along. But for the purposes of today, it's not gone quite through there. For the purposes of today, I'm just going to cut a few. So like I said, put them into piles, keep them separate. So put your darks in one pile and your lights in another. And it's really important that you get these shapes the right way. And then the next thing you do to start your braid is you need to sew, as I've done here, you need to sew a light and a dark together because that is here, and then you'll see how the others form. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your light fabric and then you're going to put your dark one over it like that, and then you're going to sew 1/4 of an inch down there, press it and flip it back. So that gives you that. I'm now going to add to this so that you can see how the braid starts to form. So I'm going to the machine now. So we've started off with our light, we've added our dark to it. So now we're going to pick up another dark and we're going to put it there. So I'm going to put right sides together. And once you've got this started correctly, you'll see how the shape forms. So as always, using 1/4 of an inch seam, I'm just going to sew to the end. And then flip it back. I'm going to finger press this. Normally I'd go to the iron, or I'd have a little iron here and I would press each one back with the iron. But I'm just going to finger press this back. I'm going to choose a different one from my light pile now, and I'm going to add that on there. Finger press that back, and then we go back to a dark one. So let's choose a different colour. Let's have that red one. So you can see we're going to put our dark one on there. So if you square the bottom up, so you've got this angle here and then this angle here, you can see that they're lined up, and then that goes up there and we sew our seam. So you know that if you're following it like that, you've got it the right way round. And finger press that back, and again we'd pick up a light one and we would put that there like that and sew down, and so on until you've got the braid as long as you want it. So I'm now going to show you some other braids that have already been made and the fact that you can sash them if you want to. So we're going back over to the table now. So you just continue adding your lights and darks to each side until you've got your braid as long as you want it to be. So I've got some braids here that were made by Barbara, and these braids are in a beautiful Christmas fabric, and you can see that this one has been sashed. So what she's done is she's trimmed all this up, and then she's added a border to either side of it. And when you do this between two braids, this is called sashing. And this border, I think, I'm just going to double check. So it was cut at 1.5, so it gives you 1 inch either side. And then that would join to this one. So you can see this is one of Barbara's work in progress. And she's a bit like me. We have many work in progresses, or UFOs, as some people call them, unfinished objects. I'm sure you're all familiar with that term. So you can see how this is building up with sashing between. So you could make your braids, you could make your sashing wider or smaller, or you could just join your braids together as they are in the quilt behind me. So we're just going to go over and look at another version of what you can do with friendship braids. So you can see that this quilt has been made up with the braids, and it hasn't been sashed in between. The braids have just been joined. So you can see we've gone dark, light, and this one has got 8 braids. The quilt finished is approximately 52 by 62. This quilt has been loaned to us by Chris from Kerno Quilters. She made this a few years ago, so this is an old jelly roll. Unfortunately, we can't get this anymore, which I'm rather disappointed about, because being purple, it's my favourite colour and I would love it. But what she's done with this is she's put a tiny little fillet here, which was cut at 3/4 inch. So she's done that beautifully. You've got to be really, really accurate with that. She's quilted, shadow quilted, 1/4 inch away from her seams using a variegated thread. So you can see that quilting across each braid. That's beautiful. And this quilting in the border I love, and Chris is very good with free motion and machine quilting, and she's done this freehand. Again, she's used a variegated thread in that border, and then she's put a plain purple binding on, and she's machined her binding, which is very clever how she's managed to do that. And if I just show you the back, you can see the quilting on the back, and you can see that lovely variegated thread. So you've got the zigzags that she's done, which is her shadow quilting of her braids. And then you can really see the detail of this quilting in the border. So you can see this is a really gorgeous example of what you can do with a jelly roll and the Creative Grids ruler. And I think this is absolutely stunning. What helps for me is definitely the colours. So I'd just like to say thank you to Chris for loaning the quilt to us today. And as always, thank you for watching, have fun, and I look forward to seeing you next time here in the sewing studio.